Hello, my name is Mattia Panachone, and I took the course Community Change in a Global Era this semester at my university. Today, I'm going to be presenting a discussion on internet access in New Mexico, which is an issue that affects my community and, if solved, could propel my state onto a more equitable plane in global relations. Let's begin by looking at the current internet access situation in New Mexico. New Mexico is one of the states whose population struggles the most with attaining internet access. Broadband Now research ranked New Mexico in 45th place when comparing internet coverages, speeds, and prices across the country. In addition to this, around 78% of households in New Mexico have a broadband internet subscription, meaning that around 22% of households do not. The United States Census Bureau provides that this is the third lowest percentage of broadband subscriptions in the country. Here I have placed Broadband Now Research's ranking of New Mexico along with the first and last areas on that same list. We look at the District of Columbia and Montana and maybe notice that geographical size is an obstacle when providing reliable and affordable broadband to an entire state. New Mexico and Montana are some of the largest states in the country with more rural areas. However, people living in rural areas still require access to the internet, as do people living in urban areas. We can also see that perhaps the high number of providers in a state does not increase competition and drive prices down. There are far fewer internet providers in the District of Columbia, yet a nearly 100% opportunity you could subscribe to an affordable plan in any given area. Since you're reviewing this presentation now, then I can go ahead and assume that you are likely accessing the internet in this moment. Aside from viewing this presentation, the internet provides a wide array of information and opportunity that affects one's lifestyle based on their ability to consistently or reliably access it. These include applying for jobs, researching political candidates before voting for them, enrolling in college, developing a new skill, whether it be guitar or cooking, gardening, or car repair, being able to stay informed on world news, learning about topics that were not taught in school. Financial literacy is a big one, and even following the legislative processes of bills that could affect you and your community. In the day of the internet, it has become more difficult to stay informed and involved in political processes without access to broadband. It is even not necessary to complete schoolwork for students of any level. A study from the University of Birmingham frames internet access as a basic human right and supports this by saying we should have unmonitored and uncensored access, and that without it we cannot participate in democratic processes anymore. If this view of the internet was adopted by communities and policymakers in New Mexico, then increased access to broadband could have many benefits for the state. These include a more informed population, whether it be in academics, arts, technical skills, and current events and politics, increased involvement or influence in national and global trade, access to information about jobs, college, and technical schools, and even a more fair distribution of access to pop culture, literature, music, and entertainment, just to name a few. However, the internet is not without its dangers, and we should mention these in the presentation. Some of these issues with widespread internet usage today include increased rates of depression and anxiety linked to social media. The aspect of anonymity can increase hate speech and bullying. Increased risk of identity theft, hacking, scams, and less privacy overall. Developing addiction to social media, gaming, and other elements of the internet. And even exposure to extremist groups and propaganda, one example being neo-Nazis and Facebook groups. Despite these setbacks, the benefits of increased access in New Mexico would serve communities well in quality of life and economic viability and in equity. There are already some groups in New Mexico that have been working towards this goal, and they are New Mexico Broadband for Education, Broadband Collective Underground Works New Mexico, Vianti New Mexico, and the New Mexico Broadband Program under the New Mexico Department of Information and Technology. We'll take a moment in the presentation to discuss each of their mission statements. Here I have a website screenshot for New Mexico Broadband for Education. So this organization gained a lot of traction during the COVID-19 pandemic. When schools shifted to an all-online format, it quickly became clear that not all households had computers, internet access, or internet access that was reliable enough to remain in class meetings or turn in homework. Students living in these households were at a disadvantage in the classroom from their peers who have computers and reliable connections and speeds of internet in their homes. New Mexico Broadband for Education got to work by mapping public Wi-Fi hotspots, distributing Chromebooks and Wi-Fi hotspots to tribal communities, and working with internet service providers to get affordable quotes to rural communities. The Broadband Collective under the organization Groundworks New Mexico brings together funders and nonprofit groups to find a solution for a statewide approach for providing internet. They understand this is an issue that largely affects tribal and rural communities, and they state that broadband is essential for healthcare, education, and employment. On these grounds, they promote a partnership of the nonprofit and the legislative efforts for a comprehensive approach. Fiante New Mexico is an organization that is heavily involved in supporting New Mexican House bills and Senate bills through the legislative process. Their efforts go into crime, education, economic opportunity, and broadband internet. Legislation they are supporting currently in 2022 include New Mexico House Bill 120, which is titled Broadband Changes in Definition, and New Mexico Senate Bill 42, which is titled Utility Easements for Broadband Act. The New Mexico Broadband Program underneath the New Mexico Department of Information and Technology is a program that aims to make the process of getting broadband subscription more informative and with an easy interface to interact with and compare options. They are accomplishing these things by analyzing broadband data in New Mexico, testing the speed and performance of different providers, creating maps, and making all of it publicly accessible. These are all great efforts. However, in order for someone to access the work that the New Mexico Broadband Program is currently putting out, they would need to already have access to the internet or a smartphone with a data plan, and not everyone has these tools. So this is where public libraries come in. Now we may ask, what is the role of public libraries in increasing internet access in communities? So aside from being able to check out books, most libraries provide access to computers with access to the internet. The World Economic Forum provides statistics on public libraries and library users that bring more context to the situation and aid in understanding how public libraries are an important resource. We read here on this slide that nearly a third of library computer users, so about 31%, don't have a smartphone. 3 in 10 library computer users, around 30%, had no computer at home. Nearly a fifth of users, so around 19%, have no internet connection at home, and over half of library computer users, 58% here, have low incomes. As for the public library situation in New Mexico, there are approximately 128 public libraries throughout the state, although it is in rural communities who often lack this public service, and consequently who also lack access to the internet, unlike urban areas. Funding for public libraries typically comes from gross receipts taxes, which ranges from 5% to 9% in New Mexico. Funding can also come from grants or bonds, either on the state level or the federal level. But public libraries are not a priority in state nor in federal funding. However, there are a few organizations in the state, such as the New Mexico Rural Library Initiative, who are working to increase broadband and libraries in the state. The New Mexico Rural Library Initiative is an organization that understands rural communities in the state are underserved and could benefit from libraries. I have a website screenshot up on the slide now. So their work revolves around securing funding to sustain libraries in rural areas, which often do not receive any municipal funding. In this presentation, many different organizations that are working to improve access to broadband, whether it be directly or through public libraries, have been highlighted. If the efforts of these initiative-based groups align with your perspective on the issues surrounding internet access as well, another way to continue working on this in New Mexico is through individual support. This can look like following the legislative processes of New Mexican House and Senate bills that support broadband access, donating money or volunteering time to the organizations in this presentation, researching and voting for political candidates who will support broadband access, legislation, and public libraries, and even if you do have access to a computer and the internet in your own home, you can visit your local library to support that these public services are needed and used by the community. Here's a slide of my resources. I want to take a moment to say thank you to the viewers. I have my email up here on the screen, and I'm happy to further discussion with you or to provide any additional resources on how to get involved.